When we refer to Russian Revolution of 1917, we tend to have an idea that because this is said to have brought communism, we tend to have I think that people involved in it and people brought this thing voluntarily, and people brought these changes against autocratic government, czars. So people against the government. But on closer examination, that doesn't seem to be the case. Number one, this government was weakened because of 1905 war and 1914 plus war, World War I. So the government was not weakened from within, but by the external sources. So people did not weaken it, it was outsiders. That is one. And second thing is, when we say Lenin, people brought communism, it appears that actually was not the case. There was external threat, instability created, and there was a fight between communists or Bolsheviks and others. And these people won. Won against the internal rivalries. And Lenin convinced more number of people and he could be more popular. So it is not that the people brought down the government. These things happened. One more thing is, did Lenin communicate his idea of communism to these people? No. Lenin single-handedly brought his idea of communism, imposed his idea of communism on Russian society. There was no consent. In fact, there was active opposition. And Lenin knew that there would be an opposition. So to bring it out, he went about party dictatorship that we discussed. But what was he imagining to be the right society when he wanted to change the society towards a particular end? And here you see Marxism. Marx wanted or predicted that advanced capitalism would bring communism. And Russian conditions are not this. What was an advanced capitalism? Number one, industrialism first. Industrialism only gives a large number of proletariat. And there was no role for feudalism in this. There was no role for feudalism. It was industry-generated proletariat. And Marx thought in advanced capitalism, it would lead to an end like this, huge proletariat and few capitalists, and these people would rebel. And Lenin, you can see that whatever was discussed in the capital, he wanted to fast forward the capital. And towards that end, he wanted Russian society to change towards a condition like this. Condition of what advanced capitalism was supposed to create, which means more proletariat. So which means that there should be more industrialization. So Lenin believed in industrialization. Industrialization creates more proletariat. Lenin did not think in terms of, okay, if there is enough of agricultural population, what should be communism to them? Lenin didn't think like that. Lenin thought of communism for the proletariat in a context of huge proletariat, and so he wanted to create more industrialization. So this desire for industrialization has theoretical roots. And number two, what do we do about peasants? Remember, peasants getting land from the landlords, from the landed to landless or poor peasants, landless, is not communism. So Lenin promised land reforms. People thought those who had land will give land to the landless, and people supported. Lenin believed that this kind of transfer of the property from the rich to the poor is revolution, he believed. But Lenin knew that once these people got land, they would not give back. But Lenin thought it was counter-revolution. So Lenin knew that the peasants would oppose his communism, because peasants, he thought, were backward looking, very primitive, and they won't understand communism. Whereas proletariat would understand. So these peasants had to be made propertyless. Then develop commune. This is communism. So which meant that to Lenin, dispossessing all the peasants, rich or poor, first rich would be dispossessed, and after that everybody would be dispossessed, which Lenin knew would be opposed, would be communism. So why this so? Because Marx did not see any communism from the peasants. In fact, in one edition of Communist Manifesto, he said something that probably from Russian conditions may give rise to a particular brand of communism. But Lenin, I mean, that's what Marx wrote, but Lenin did not work on that. So Lenin had the idea that proletariat, that they would be favorable and the peasants won't. So there should be fewer peasants and they should be dispossessed and they should commune. They should have commune. And this is a party led. This party leading is Lenin's innovation. Okay. So in effect, what is Lenin doing? Lenin he was trying to squeeze Russian society to fit a book. the book of Das Kapital, fast forwarding the developments and trying to create an end that advanced capitalism was supposed to reach in the beginning. So that is how he had to do a lot of violence because people were not part of this kind of communism. Okay. So in what was called war communism, so peasant problem was solved like this. Peasants, class conflict was engineered among the peasants, rich versus poor. Okay. So poor peasants are landless, taking from the rich. Class conflict. This was revolution. But then land to be taken by the state. This Lenin thought counter-revolution. Okay. So class conflict was engineered to attack the rich, and state was used to take the land from everybody. And more importantly, after taking the land, there should be fewer peasants to begin with, because peasants do not want a communism. It would only be proletariat. It should be based on industrialization, and so there should be enough of industrialization. So fewer peasants. Okay, but Lenin knew, as given that position, there were not enough of proletariat, and so he thought that there should be support from other countries. So communist revolution should not be confined only to Russia, but it should go to other countries also. So you can see that Lenin was not trying to find out what should be communism for Russian society. He was trying to see what Marx wrote about when communism would come, and he wanted to create such a society, but through action. There was no scope for action in Marx Capital. Things were supposed to happen inevitably through inherent logic of capitalism. But Lenin was trying to use reason, leadership, and party to create such conditions to bring that revolution. But in this case, there was really no participation from the people. So it was one man's idea. And later, this led to a lot of violence. So under war communism, he would take produce from the farmers with so much of resistance. And it was in that context, in May 1918, Lenin declared that the owners of grain who possess surplus grain but refuse to turn it in, regardless of the social status, rich or poor, will be declared enemies of the people. Okay. So much later, in March 1921, he announced new economic policy. Okay, but the reason why new economic policy had to be announced was peasant unacceptance of what Lenin was doing. Okay, and what Lenin started, Stalin did with much more ruthlessness. For example, between 1929 to 1933, 10 million died due to collectivization drive, and mostly due to famines. Many became beggars. Stalin created forms which would be party run. So, in fact, Stalin leadership was ideologically justified by others on the ground that if you don't do it by force, why will peasants cooperate? So how can anybody agree for collectivization? How can anybody give their property? So Stalin thought that he had that determination and will to implement Marxism and Leninism. So that was Stalin's source of legitimacy. Okay, and also in the same kind of orientation was also used in industrialization process also. So many uh, people lost the property and they were brought to industry, and that's one. And then many people were jailed. That was another. So it is found that during 1930s, it is estimated that 10% of GNP is produced by prisoners. Okay, so there was coercion in industrialization, there was coercion in agricultural reforms, and this coercion was justified on the ground that we are going to create communist society, and if we don't do like this, uh, how can communism come? Okay, so this is the real nature of Russian Revolution. Neither Lenin nor Stalin asked the basic question. Maybe Marx was wrong. Maybe people don't want communism. Maybe better society need not be visualized in terms of lack of absence of private property. Okay, and if Russia is not of advanced capitalism, how should communism be defined for Russian society? Mm, So Lenin did not ask such questions, which we can think legitimate questions. So much of violence was committed by these leaders in trying to squeeze Russian society to fit the conditions that Marx wrote about. What all Marx wrote in the context of Russia was this. He wrote, the present Russian common ownership of land may serve as the starting point for communist development. So Marx was trying to think, okay, there could be, in one edition of the Communist Manifesto he wrote, maybe different kind of strategy may be needed, but this line was not pursued at all. So very legitimate questions that should have been asked on what should be the nature of communism in Russian society were not asked, and because of which so much of violence was generated, which was completely avoidable.